All right, welcome everyone to our webinar, and this is Diverse Book Audits, a step-by-step guide, and I'm Caroline Smith, the Inclusive Services Consultant here at the South Carolina State Library. And we'd like to acknowledge that this program is made possible by funding from a Library Services and Technology Act grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, which is administered by us, the South Carolina State Library. And we do have automatic closed captioning. If you'd like to enable that during the webinar, you'll just go down to the bottom of your screen and click on show subtitles, I believe, and you can see that. And excuse me, I'll stop sharing my screen. And a couple other announcements before I introduce our speaker. We will be recording this webinar, and I'll share that link within a couple of days by email, as well as a copy of the slides. I will also be here monitoring the chat, so let me know if you are having any problems and if I can help. And with that, I'll introduce our speaker, Valerie Byrd Fort. She is an instructor at the University of South Carolina. She is a member of the iSchool faculty and teaches courses related to children's literature, school libraries, and library programming. And in addition to teaching, she's the coordinator of Cocky's Reading Express, the University of South Carolina's literacy outreach program. So welcome, Valerie. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Let me share my screen and then we will get started. So first, can you see my screen and everyone can hear me?
We can see it. It's not in the slideshow mode, but we can see it.
Perfect. Okay, great. And I know that you can also hear me. So welcome. So this is Diverse Book Audits, a step-by-step guide. I am Valerie Byrd Fort, and we're going to go ahead and jump right in because we have 1 hour together. So it's going to be pretty quick, but there will hopefully be time for questions and hopefully some time for you to actually start thinking about how to make the first steps or how to take the first steps to doing a diverse book audit. So again, thank you for being here. And during our time together, we will focus on students and young readers, but I want you to know that you can do any of this with any library collection. So I'm going to go back real quick. My background is in school libraries. So I was an elementary school librarian for about 15 years. So that is kind of my mindset, right? So I always think of students and I kind of think of K-5 when I'm talking and speaking, but please know that everything that I am going to talk about in this webinar today can be done in a school library, it can be done in an academic library, a public library, and at all levels. So even though most or many of my examples are going to be kind of elementary school centered, please know that this is for all of you. You will all be able to do what I'm going to share with you today. So again, we have 1 hour, and during our time together, we're going to define what diverse book audits are. We're going to go over what we mean when we say diverse books. We'll review why diverse books are important, and we'll talk about some ways to actually conduct a diverse book audit. We'll talk about the then what. So we'll learn how to do an audit, but what are you going to do after that audit is complete, right? What action steps are you going to take? Hopefully you'll leave here this afternoon ready to take some steps towards evaluating your own collections for diversity. So let's get started. So first, what is a diverse book audit? So the word audit itself sounds so official, right? But we can think of this in terms of just our collection development. It's what we all do all the time. Doing an audit or doing an analysis is just part of your collection development. You already analyze your collections to see what you have or where you're lacking things that that meet the needs for academic standards in school libraries, or topics you know that patrons want to learn about. You already think about your collection in that way. Maybe you have a suggestion box, or you have a request form that patrons fill out. So you're already kind of analyzing and thinking about your collections, right? So why not add diversity to what you are thinking about when you are analyzing your collections? Think about adding diverse audits, diverse evaluations to your collection development policy. Make this something that is done yearly, every other year. Think of it as, you know, you do inventory perhaps every year, every other year. Think about doing this evaluation on a schedule so that it's not something that's just done once and then kind of forgotten about. What do we mean by diverse? So a lot of times when we're building collections, or these are things that I hear, and maybe, you know, when I was building my own collections, sometimes, you know, I would make sure I had books that looked like my students or the patrons that came into my library, but we have to go beyond what they just look like, right? So when we're thinking about diverse, we think of all kinds of factors, many of which are listed here, and we want to be careful to be inclusive of everyone. We can do a community analysis, and we can say that we have books for everyone in our community, but there are some things that don't show up in a community analysis. They're not measured on the census, for example. So there are things that we don't know just by looking at our patrons, and we need to have materials that include all of them. So by looking at this list, I want you to kind of look at this list, and then you can put in chat anything else that you might want to look at. So, oh, can you explain what you mean by gender bias in terms of diversity? So just, so that is, I am looking here. Okay, so that means, you know, when you're doing an evaluation of your collection, or you're looking at your collection, and we'll talk about this a little bit later too, but making sure that things aren't stereotypes. So maybe you have books that represent all genders, right? Male, female, non-binary, you've got all trans, you've got these books in your libraries, right? But what are the stories that they are telling? Make sure that they are not stereotypes, you know, that sort of thing. I think that's what I mean by gender bias. And are there any categories here that you think that are missing? Is there anything missing here when we're thinking about our collections in terms of diversity? Nationality, yes, that's very important for picture books. Oh yes, Lee, thank you for bringing that up for picture books. And we'll look at the infographic in just a moment that I'm sure many of you have already seen, where, you know, there are things that we need to think about when animals are the main characters in picture books, like what is represented with those animals. There's a lot of research, you know, about for monkeys, for example, in books, in picture books, and how they are represented. Language, yes, Julie, thank you for that. So I think language is so important to consider in your collections, and having a variety of languages. And when you do that community analysis, making sure that you've got books in various languages and that suit the cultures of the folks in your community as well. And even if you don't have certain languages represented or certain cultures represented in your community analysis, you still need them in your collections, right? And we'll review why diverse books are so important, but I think having those different languages thank you. Yes, thank you, Alex. I will fix that. Thank you so much. Any others that you see that are not listed in here, or anything else that you might want to mention before we move on? And really, it's to say that we need to go beyond what our patrons look like, right? When I do professional development sessions for school librarians and we talk about having diverse books in the collection, many times what I've heard is I'm using my money, my funding to have books in my collection that look like my students, you know, and while that is one aspect of it, there is so much also diverse ages. Yes, thank you, Kate. So we've kind of, I've mentioned some of this, or I said that I was getting to this. Why is it important to have diverse collections? So this is a review because I think we have heard a lot of this and we know a lot of this already, right? So it is important to have diverse collections because they reflect the world and people of the world. They teach respect for all cultural groups. They serve as a window and mirror and as an example of how to interact in the world. Books that are diverse show that despite differences, all people share common feelings and aspirations. They can create a wider curiosity for the world. They prepare children for the real world and others. Like I said, a lot of this is going to be geared towards children and students, but really they prepare everyone for the real world, right? And they enrich educational experiences. So there is so much to gain by having diverse collections. And I'm not going to read the whole quote because certainly you have seen by now, Rudine Sims Bishop says that we need books that are windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors in our collections and for children. But one part of her essay that I want to take out that I think is most important, and I think for children in particular, but really for any of your patrons. When children or patrons cannot find themselves reflected in the books they read, or when the images they see are distorted, negative, or laughable, they learn a powerful lesson about how they are devalued in the society for which or of which they are a part. So if you just don't have these books in your collection, or for educators, for teachers, for librarians, if you're just not sharing these books, you're leaving out certain audiences. You're leaving out your community. You're leaving out folks in your community. So it is important to make sure that your patrons can find themselves reflected in the books that they are reading, in the books that they find on the shelves in their libraries. It's critical. And I am going to try to keep yes, creates empathy, Kate, going back to why diverse books are so important. Thank you. And this is the infographic that I mentioned earlier. And I do want to say, I will share my slides when this is done. And in the notes to the slides, I've got links and the citations for where this information comes from so that you can go back later and look. So just know that you will have that information shared with you later. But I wanted to share these infographics with you. And chances are you have seen this information. But just some things that I want to go over before we go deeper into how to do a diverse book audit or evaluation. So the Cooperative Children's Book Center at the University of Wisconsin-Madison collects statistics on the books that they receive from publishers. They do content analysis of the books that they receive, right? And they've been doing this for years. This is not something that they just started doing. It's something that they've done for years. In 2015, you can see the first infographic that came out with the numbers for that year. So this is diversity in children's books in 2015. And again, I am focusing on children's books here, but it is, very important to have diversity in all of the books that we're sharing. But in 2015, you can see that the numbers, 73.3% of the books that they did a content analysis on, they had white characters. The 12.5% were animals, trucks, 7.6 African Americans, 3.3% Asian Pacific Americans, 2.4% was Latinx, and 0.9% was American Indians, First Nations. So that was in 2015. And so then if we look at the updated infographic in 2018, you can see that numbers are slightly better. It is interesting to note, just going back to what we talked about earlier about animals in picture books in particular, if you look, so in 2018, we had 50% for the white characters, and then 27% for animals other. So that is a big increase, right? From 12.5% to 27%. But what we need to consider there is that what are those animals doing? What does that look like in those illustrations, right? And then just the idea of why did we go to animals instead of increasing these other characters? So that's something else to think about and look at when you're purchasing, when you're making book purchases. And so you can look at all of the numbers there and see slight increases, but it needs to get better. It needs to continue to get better. And I think we need to increase that even more. So I also have included here publishing statistics. So this is Lee and Low Books, Diversity in Publishing from 2019. And this is the diversity baseline survey. And I'm actually gonna click out of here so that we can go to the link. And you'll have to tell me, I wonder if I might have to stop sharing. You'll have to tell me if it goes to the website. Did it go to the blog?
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. I couldn't remember how I shared my screen. So this is one resource that I have in some shared resources that I'll show you later on. But the Lee and Low Open Book blog has really great posts, especially in terms of diverse book audits and how to do them like step by step in a classroom, in a school library, in a public library. So I'll show you that later on, but this goes into publishing in particular. And this is really important because it is the publishers, right, who are making the decisions of what gets published. And so when you look at their baseline results, it's really kind of, or it is eye-opening and also a good explanation of perhaps why things aren't getting better as quickly as we would like, right? So when you look at the industry overall, 76% identify as white, 74% of them are cis women, 81% of them identify as straight, and then 89% are non-disabled. So that, the folks making the decisions are not diverse. And so I think that is something really important for us to be aware of. And this is industry overall, but then if you look and dig deeper, they go into the executive level of publishing, editorial, so they really break it down. So I think that it's really good, important information to be familiar with. And then also, I want to look back here to see what publishers this information came from. So, there's like the big five, right? But then there are smaller publishers too, and maybe consider getting materials from those publishers that more focus on publishing diverse books and working with diverse authors and illustrators. So I wanted to make sure that you had that information kind of in your back pocket also, because it is important to be familiar with that. Oh, let's go there. All right. Oh man, I keep clicking on the link. So sorry. Okay, so now I am going to stop sharing for a moment to see if anyone just has any questions about any of that so far or anything that they want to add. And then we're going to really kind of go into how to do the evaluation itself. But I wanted to stop here just to see before I went any further. All right, well then I am going to share my screen again. Here we go. Oh, you can see a calendar, can't you? Let me stop sharing. Happens every time. Okay, I'm just going to share my desktop with you, and then I should be able to. There we go. Okay, so can you see diverse book audits? I think we're back on track. Or are you looking at like my desktop or something? Great, thank you. Okay, so let's talk about audits. So there are different types of diversity audits, diverse book audits, and it does not have to be overwhelming. I think that when we think about it initially, or when we even start thinking about doing a diverse book audit, we then look at our collection, look at how enormous it is, and then just like, oh, well, how am I going to wrap my brain around this? Where am I going to find time to do this, right? Well, you can do all kinds of different types of audits. So you can do your whole collection, right? And that is a massive undertaking, I think, but you can do it. You can do a small section of your collection. So maybe you want to focus only on fiction, or maybe you just want to focus on your realistic fiction. You can just do a small section of it. Maybe you do a random sample and you do a content analysis in that way. Or you can do a reverse audit. So what I mean when I say reverse audit is, let's say you want to look at the Stonewall Book Awards, for example. So if you're not familiar with Stonewall Book Awards, those are books that have LGBTQIA themes, characters, experiences. They are award winners. It is an award given by the Rainbow Roundtable, I believe, from the American Library Association. So let's say that you take that list of award winners, and then you look at your collection to see which of those books you have. So you could do it in that way. So a reverse audit. I will tell you of an audit that I have done. I am, like Caroline said, I am the coordinator for Cocky's Reading Express, which is the University of South Carolina's literacy outreach program. Cocky's Reading Express travels the state of South Carolina, sharing books with kids. We read books aloud and we give books away. Cocky's Reading Express started in 2005, and I have been the coordinator for the past 4 years. So when I started my first year, I did a diverse book audit of the books that we have given away since 2005 and the books that we have read aloud since 2005. Now, it was not perfect because, record keeping, it's kind of been up to graduate assistants each year. So sometimes I had the books that we've read aloud, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I know what books we've given away, sometimes I didn't. So it's not a perfect analysis, but I was able to take 73 of those books. So throughout time, and the books, the way that they are selected, they've got to be a good read aloud. For the books that we give away, a lot of it is based on budget, right? Like how many books can we buy with a certain amount of grant funding, for example, because we're funded by grants and gifts. So, the books that are selected for Cocky's Reading Express, there's not the same kind of process in place for how we select our books for our library collections, right? But I wanted to do an audit of that particular collection so that I could make sure that we were sharing books with kids that were diverse. And I was not necessarily surprised by the results, but what I have gotten from the results, we were sharing lots of white authors. We had lots of white characters, very much similar to like what the infographic showed. And so at my action with that is that now I am very intentional about the books that we share aloud and the books that we purchase to give away. So that is an example of doing an audit with a small collection of books. So you could do that. So like if you're a school librarian and you're doing, you find yourself kind of reading the same things year after year, you've got your favorites for certain lessons that you read, do an audit of those particular books. Those are books that you're sharing with your students, right? And the ones that we share are the ones they want to check out. So make sure that those are diverse. You could even do an audit of people that you are giving to students to research, or of just like a biography collection, or of displays that you do a quick audit of a display and make sure that that is diverse. So it does not have to be your whole entire collection is my point. It can be, but it can be also a very small collection to at least get started. I also have a link here to a blog, Reading While White, and this is a blog post about the benefits of a diversity book audit, but then also the limits of the audit. So make sure that it's something, that you're not just doing one time as kind of a checkbox, like, okay, I did my diverse book audit. I know what I have, and then just like putting it in a drawer. No, like, what are you going to do next, right? And then are you going to do it on a scheduled basis? That's what they talk about in this blog post. And I think it's a really important post to read and will help you kind of think about why are you doing this and what action steps can you take? There are tools out there to help you with your diverse book audits. And that also will help you in terms of making it less overwhelming, right? So these tools almost do the hard work for you. It's a start, and then you can see how it's done, get comfortable, and then jump in to do it yourself and on a larger scale, right? And one of these really amazing tools is Diverse Book Finder. Diverse Book Finder is a searchable collection where it's awesome. So like take, for example, one of Cocky's Reading Express's favorite read alouds is The Watermelon Seed by Greg Pozzoli. So I could go to Diverse Book Finder, put in The Watermelon Seed, and then get diverse books that might have the same, idea behind it, where it'll be a good read aloud, but it'll be diverse in nature. So that is what Diverse Book Finder does. However, they also have a collection analysis tool that is free for all libraries. And it does right now, as far as I'm aware, it focuses on picture books. And so I submitted the South Carolina Center for Community Literacy, which is where my office is. It is a Library of Congress designated review center. So we get books from publishers, much like CCBC does. And so what I did was I submitted our collection into the collection analysis tool from the Diverse Book Finder. And this is the information you get back. So how are these groups represented in your collection? You can see that they have different kind of designators. So Asian Pacific Islander, Asian American, bi, multiracial, mixed race, Black, African, African American. And so it kind of segments what we have on those races. And so then to here, you see Any Child, Beautiful Life, biography, cross group, folklore. So each of those things, and I'm going to, let's see, I think the way I shared my screen is I'm going to go, I think I have the link, I believe if I click, yep, there it is. So did it go to my full report? or do you still see my slide? Okay, perfect. So great. So this is what the report looks like for the collection analysis tool. It talks about like what I sent them. So I sent them 3,181 items, 235 items, matched what they had in their collection. So you can see that's a pretty small number, but it will, and I think what I did when I submitted it is I submitted our full collection. I did not just submit picture books, which is what this covers. But again, this is a good start, right? So it said within the 228 racially and culturally diverse picture books we were able to identify in your collection, the relative prevalence of characters represented was examined to produce the graphs and tables below. And so I want to scroll down so that you can see what their designators mean. And so they've got trends in your collection. How are they represented? And so here are their categories. And they even have an example for each one. So for example, Beautiful Life is books featuring BIPOC in which race, ethnicity, tribal affiliation, culture, immigration and or religious, sacred or origin stories are central to the story. So they really break it down very detailed. So I think this is a really neat tool to use. Again, it's a great start, a good starting point. It is just for picture books, but it is a free analysis and their website is just full of good information as well. So I wanted to make sure that you were familiar with that. Also, back to my slides. So I have Follett here. So again, my background is as a school librarian here in South Carolina, and I am familiar with using Destiny, which is with Follett, right? So they have a diverse analysis tool that you can, you have to ask for it to be turned on. And so what it does is it gives you, I did it yesterday for our collection, and it just has you click like what diverse topics you want to see, how many books you have in your collection about particular groups. And so it does just list the groups itself. So for example, if I wanted to click, I just clicked everything to see what we had, and then it just gives you the number. So the numbers of books that have designations of African Americans as the main characters, or the certain number of books that have LGBTQIA as one of the subjects. So it is also not going to be a perfect analysis, but it's going to be a good tool to help you get started. And then it goes into showing you the titles and some other things you can do. Now, again, I'm showing you Follett here as the example because that's what I'm familiar with, and that's the cataloging system that we use at the South Carolina Center for Community Literacy. But whatever system you use, chances are, because this is an important topic, this is something that we've all been talking about for a while now, chances are your cataloging system has some sort of similar tool in place. And I do see things in the chat, so I'm gonna see. No, so Kate, this is, so Kate, is your question about, okay, so I'm thinking, so the collection analysis tool that I just showed for diverse book finder, that is just for picture books, okay? But this, the Follett tool, will look at your whole collection. It does not just look at picture books, it looks at your entire collection. So I hope that answers that question. Great. And then Mary Rhett says that hers was very eye-opening when she thought she had been adding so many diverse books. Always work to do, for sure. Is there anyone out there that uses something other than Follett, that maybe they've used a tool that has helped them analyze their collection for diversity. Because again, like I said, I am familiar with Follett, and that is what I have used in the past, and that's what I have access to at the South Carolina Center for Community Literacy. But what are there other tools out there that folks have used? Feel free to put that in chat, or you can even unmute yourself. Well, if not, you can always ask your customer service representative. So for whatever vendor you use for your cataloging, even for like your purchasing. So let's say you don't purchase from Follett, for example, but you don't use Follett for your cataloging. However, you purchase from them, right? You can still then, I believe, do the diverse audit using like the orders that you've done through them using Tidal Wave or TidalWise. So ask your customer service representative if they offer something, what other vendors are out there, Mackin, Baker and Taylor. I would assume that they all have tools that you can explore and use. So now that you know that there are tools out there to help you get started pretty quickly, like here are some ways to do it kind of not on your own necessarily, but just kind of setting your plan. And so like I said, so this is setting goals and developing a plan, but I want to go back to when I was talking about Cocky's Reading Express and how I did my audit. So I want to tell you what I did and how I kind of set my goals and developed my plan, because that is important. It's not something that you can just say, okay, today I'm going to do this audit and then I've done it and the end, right? It's going to take time. So no matter what size of your collection you decide to analyze, it is going to take a little bit of time to do. So what I did, first, I decided that I wanted to take on this project, right? It's important. I really wanted the students that we see with Cocky's Reading Express to see themselves in the books that we're sharing with them and to see themselves in the books that they are taking home. So that was my goal. So then I looked at all of the books. So so that was my goal. And then I knew my collection that I needed to analyze, right? I needed to look at the books that we read aloud. I needed to look at the books that we give away. So I compiled all of those in an Excel spreadsheet. So I had my titles, and then I had, copyright author, because you can also, because I cross-listed also. So not only did I just look at the books themselves, but I looked at the authors and illustrators, because not only is it important to have books that are diverse with diverse characters and diverse illustrations, but you need to make sure that the people who are writing those books are also diverse, right? So I wanted to look at my authors and illustrators as well. So I did the Excel spreadsheet with the book titles. And then of course I had the authors and illustrators. And then I went through, and I'm going to show you some of these resources in just a moment, but I kind of did I looked at a variety of other audits out there, and then I kind of made my own. So basically what you do is you figure out, what is it that I want to look for? Do I want to look for LGBTQIA characters? Do I want to look for characters that are certain races? Like, what am I looking for? And then you simply start looking for it. So mine were all picture books. And I will say that it's probably, to do it with young adult novels, and I'll be showing you some examples, or with adult novels, it's, it's going to be harder to actually like do it by sitting there and reading them, right? You're probably going to rely on reviews and on other designators, but of course, like reading them is what's best. But this is what I did with Cocky's Reading Express, because they were picture books. We physically read them and kind of looked at it and did tally marks basically on a spreadsheet to count up what we were noticing and what we saw. So with that, then after we read them, and I say we because I did have help. We have, we are at the University of South Carolina, and we're lucky enough to have graduate assistants. So they were very helpful in that analysis. But then after tracking that information, then we looked at our numbers as a whole, and then found out where our holes were, right? And where we needed to build up the collection. So that is what I did. So this has goal setting, census data. So maybe you want to look at your community and see where your holes are in terms of like what your community looks like and what your collection looks like. Look at your school data. Like, it's really like, what is your goal? What is your purpose? What is it that you're looking for? So that goal setting part is really going to be individual to you. Then after you do your audit, then it's time to take your action steps, right? You can, like I said, you cannot just do it. What are you going to do with it? And so then create your plan for filling your holes, filling your gaps. Weeding is always important. I would say to do that first, right? Because you don't want to necessarily do a content analysis on books that you plan to remove from your collection, but weed and then figure out what to do next. So develop your plan. How long is it going to take you to get books to fill some of the gaps that you have? And then two, it can be tied to a funding request. So in school libraries, take the titles of books that you want to purchase to your school principal as a budget request. Maybe, it's something that if you need like a bond referendum or something larger, you'll have the materials needed. And then you'll have like, I did this audit. We are really lacking on books about this particular group or subject, and we really need to fund, buying the books to fill this hole. So that's how it can be tied into a funding request. Again, this is going back to that blog post that I talked about before. So what are some of the limits of the diverse book audit? So are we doing them because it's what we feel like we should be doing, or is it because we really care deeply about how we can make our collections better? Is it something we're going to continue doing along and along? And then also other things, it's can lack an intersectional approach. You want to think about the stories that you're sharing in your collection. Now, before I talk about these resources, I am going to see if we have any questions, because these resources are really like where you can go step by step to start. And so I also want to make sure you have a little bit of time to think about your first step after this session today. So first, for resources, I do have, I wrote about what I did for Cockey's Reading Express in the August-September School Library Connection issue. So I've got that cited here so that you can get that and look at that. And I do go step by step into how I conducted my diverse book audit. Like I said, I do have some resources here that I'm going to show you in just a moment, but I am going to stop sharing to see if there are any questions, or if anyone wants to share kind of like maybe what their first step is going to be, or if you've already got some things in mind that you want to share with the group. Great, thank you, Alex. I'll add that to the Padlet also. Yeah, so Megan says planning to do a display audit first. I think that's a great first step. And then, you can start kind of thinking about it for everything you do, right? Like when you, if you're a student, for example, and you're reading research about certain topics, like who whose research are you reading, right? Like, do a diverse audit of the people that you are learning from, so that you can make sure that you are getting diverse viewpoints, that you're not just you know, focusing and learning from the same groups. A collection can be diverse. Let's see. Yes, Margaret is going to get the Fallout feature turned on for diversity analysis. And I think it does need to be done at like a central office level, district level. But you just talk to your, like I said, customer service representative for that. Yes, that is very true too, Alex. And then something, you know, goes back to the idea of, so are you doing a diverse book audit? And are you saying that you have good representation of diversity in your collections because you're buying books that Follett, for example, has said, here's our diverse book list, buy these and you will have diverse books in your collection, right? Like, make sure that the books are actually representative of the groups that they are supposed to be representative of. Again, they're not, you know, sharing stereotypes. And in the Padlet, I will show you some good resources to go to find those books, you know, because so now you've got these gaps and holes that you need to fill. How are you going to fill them, right? So I'll give you some resources for that. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, so Mary Rhett says, we did 3 boxes of long outdated books yesterday to add new books about different countries. Yep. So weeding is very, very important. And then, yep, Megan goes on to say with her display audit, it's small and manageable to start, and it will also tell you what books you have available as well as which ones you choose to put on display. Yes, exactly. All right, so now I am gonna, if I can, I'm gonna share my screen again here. I am telling you that I am not trying to share that email. Let's just go back here. Okay, perfect. So this Padlet, and it will grow, but I have created this Padlet with resources to really help you conduct your audits, because a lot of this is going to be individual, right? It's going to be how you need it done and what you are looking for, right? I don't think there is any one spreadsheet that I can share with you. I don't think there is any one list that I can share with you, but there are lots of wonderful resources out there. And so I have lots of links here, and I'm going to add the one that Alex shared. And then if anyone else has links to share as well, I'm happy to add those to here. Or you can add them. So so I want to show you some of the really great ones. So this is from, this is a culturally responsive scorecard tool that I think is really interesting. And can you see this? It should say culturally responsive curriculum scorecard. And this is from, perfect, New York. And when you scroll down, it's just interesting to me, considering all of the discussions about, you know, curriculum, critical race theory, and what we're teaching in K-12 classrooms. But what this is a way that you can go through, and it's geared towards curriculum, but you can definitely use it for library collections as well. But it gives you kind of a scorecard and a tally to kind of rate the curriculum and see what is missing, see what's covered, see what's not covered. And so all of this is explanation, and I'm gonna go down to the scorecard itself. But I think this is a really good start here. So diversity of characters, authors, representation. Again, this is curriculum, but I think that it could hold for collection as well. And so you can take parts of this for your own, what you want to look for. So that was one that I have here. Karen Jensen has done a lot of writing about step-by-step on how she has done her audits. There is also a link to School Library Journal where she did a whole series of really step-by-step how she conducted her audits. And this is diversity considerations in young adult, so in YA. So she, I believe, I want to say is a high school librarian or was a high school librarian when she did this. That could be incorrect, but this is focused on young adults, right? So she includes some links and then talks about what it is and really goes into a lot of very detailed information. And she gives you her spreadsheet and talks about what she looked for in her collection development. So that I think is a great, another great starting point. So here's the School Library Journal Diversity Auditing 101. She wrote that series, I believe. Let me click on it because that could be wrong. Yep. So Karen Jensen wrote that or worked on that. This All the Wonders. So Matthew Winter was a school librarian, now does something different, but actually like this was something that really inspired me to do the diverse audit for Cocky's Reading Express. But Matthew Winter had a podcast where he interviewed authors and illustrators and talked about books. And so he did an audit of who he was speaking with and what books he was talking about. So he talks about doing that audit here on this episode. So main topic is diversity audit. So he does talk about doing this in his classroom library and then talked about doing it for the blog itself. So I think that is a really good article to read for a starting point as well, as are these other links that I have included. One final link that I want to call your attention to before I get questions and take a peek at the chat. So Project Ready is from North Carolina. Project Ready, Reimagining Equity and Access for Diverse Youth. If you are here with us in South Carolina, you might know that we have a Project Ready SC group where we are meeting monthly and we go through these modules together. And let me say this, that this is something you can do on your own, no matter where you are. This is a wonderful kind of self-paced program to go through. But module 24A is called Transforming Library Collections. And you can see it's part 1, but this goes into more information about why diverse literature is so important, has videos, TED Talks, and if you keep scrolling down, you will see a template that one school librarian has done. And then also you'll see some of the same links that I have shared with you today. So library collection shelf audit will take you, it's a shelf audit for diversity and inclusion. So this is like a random audit. So let's start by seeing how many books on a randomly selected shelf you have that are diverse. That is, feature a main character from a historically marginalized community. So this is another way, right, to do this. And so a step-by-step template that you can use. And so this would just be one random shelf in your collection, and you could go through and do several random shelves using this template. So again, all of those resources are on this Padlet. This is a Padlet that I will continue to add to, and also you can get to it from the slides that will be shared after this presentation. So now let me go to chat. Yep, you sure will have it. And yeah, so gosh, Alex, thank you. So that is definitely a good point that own voices is a descriptive tool. It doesn't mean that the representation is accurate or good. There has been much conversations. You might remember seeing, I feel like it was several months ago now, We Need Diverse Books, the organization that has great resources for diverse titles in your collections. No, I love it, Alex. Thank you so much. That you know, they said they are going to stop using the own voices hashtag for that very reason. So it is something to think about. And I also wanted to say, you know, I'll add this to the Padlet because it might not be there, but I did say that I would share some good resources and places to go to then find good books to fill your collections, right? So you'll want to look at book awards, but then also consider like who are on the committees for those book awards, right? But there are lots and lots of great places to go. Try to find like Brown Bookshelf is one off the top of my head, Lee and Low Books. There's lots of great places to go to actually find great titles for your collections. And my last slide here is all of my contact information. And so now I am going to stop sharing and see if there are any final questions. We are almost at the end of our hour. I thank you so much for being here today. Again, this is recorded, so we will share it. I will share my slides, but what are your questions? And Megan says, I think one of the hardest things about starting out with making your collection more diverse is it's way more complex than expected. Yes, it really is. And then also, again, I know that I've said this a lot, but with your audits and with your collections, it's great to purchase diverse books, right? But then what are you doing with them? What are you sharing them? Are you putting them out on display? What are you doing with them afterwards, right? It's really important to then use them and share them with your patrons and, you know, not keep them just on the shelf to say that, okay, I did it. I did my audit. I ordered my books and I've done what I need to do. Make sure that you're actually using those great diverse books in your libraries. Are there any other questions or anything else to share? Or if anyone has experience doing this work, please share. We can all learn from each other. And if you think of anything after, feel free to email me, contact me. I am always happy to help or to try to help. So I am going to share my email address in the chat. It is on the slide too. And I think that we are going to have the recording open to the public, right, Caroline? So yes, feel free to share if you thought that it was helpful. And Alex says it takes work, but it gets easier at this point. Almost everything I buy reflects marginalizations. Yes, I think that is so important because forever we've been spending a lot of money on those books that are cisgender, that are white characters, right? Like now it's time to spend that money on these marginalized groups and books for them and books about them and by them. For sure. Well, thank you so much for having me today.
Great. Thank you for being here, Valerie, and thank you to all our attendees. And like we've shared in the chat, you will receive an email within the next couple of days with a link to the recording and the slides and the Padlet. And please follow up with me or with Valerie if you have any questions. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks everyone.